Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm going to, since it's 7 minutes after 4, I'm going to open the meeting and we'll pick up anybody else, but I think we have enough to establish a quorum, so I think we should just go ahead because could get long and tedious before this is over with. If anybody's got any objections to that, speak up now.
Can you get me my headphones, Court?
Okay. I'm going to declare the Historic Landmark Commission meeting for August the 5th open, and I would like to have Paula establish who is in attendance via Zoom.
Bev Agee.
Here.
Forrest Eckerly.
Here.
Eric Gleason.
Here.
Doug Leash is absent right now. Bob McNary.
Here.
Scott Randall. I think he may have just, and Donna Lawrence.
Here.
Thank you.
With that completed, would we like to go through the ritual of the Pledge of Allegiance? I didn't drag my flag in, but your flag there, Andy, Paula?
There's one back there in the corner.
That's what we need on the screen. If anyone wants to lead or wants to not even talk, that's their privilege, but we will have the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now, if you people have got in front of you the agenda for this meeting, I want to call to your attention that we are not having the minutes of the last meeting at this time, so I wouldn't have to worry about missing it tonight. So I would, if the agenda meets with you people, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written or amended or however you want to handle it.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
And I'll second that. Or Bev will.
All in favor, say aye.
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 The motion passed unanimously. Now, I have to rail upon whoever is conductor of the Zoom. Is there anyone in the audience that isn't a commission member that might want an opportunity to speak at this time? Do you see anybody, Paula?
Nope.
Okay, we're going to move on to opening the public hearing and go through the ritual of Bob spending a lot of time reading, and we will get on with this program. Now is the time specified for the Historic Landmark Commission to conduct a public hearing. The purpose of this public hearing, and I want to stop right there and put a little added on our minutes, that knowing no other way to do this, besides listening to me do this twice, I am reading the procedure for a public meeting, and we will have two public meetings, two hearings in this, but I'm only going to read the procedure one time. So at this point, I'm going to read the procedure for application 181-20, Discovery Development, Sunshine Mill, 901 East 2nd Street, and they're requested for additional doors and windows and. So now back to the. Hi, Doug. I hear Doug dinging, but I'm going to go on.
Did you just talk to me?
Are you there, Doug?
My iPad went south and Michael just fixed it for me. This is Doug talking.
Are you in audio?
I can hear you.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm not very much to look at anyhow. So we'll just go up there and we can hear you. So, the statute criteria upon which the Historic Landmarks Commission will base its decision in this manner are contained in the City Comprehension Plan and the Land Use and Development Ordinances. A public hearing is required by law and certain rules apply. First and foremost, you must be recognized by the chair in order to speak and present testimony. When recognized by the chair, please state your name and we will get you on the something. We want your mailing address for sure. We have to know who it is that is talking to us. This hearing will be required by law to be tape recorded, so we need that. Even though we won't see your face, you can contact us by phone. Prior to the public hearing, a determination will be made of the qualifications of the committee members and allow for challenges from the audience. I will open the public hearing with staff report. The purpose of this staff report at this point is to further identify the applicant's criteria of the case being considered and to provide background information about the case. After the staff report, you will hear testimony from proponent, those in favor of the application. Next, there will be testimony from the opponents, those not in favor. And next, there will be testimony from anyone else who is out on the air or wherever that wants to talk about this particular application. Then, to honor the right of rebuttal, we will again hear from those in favor of the application. After we read above information, ask the following question. Has any of the members had a conflict of interest that would not allow them to make an impartial decisions upon this hearing?
I can't.
Hearing
No.
none. Hearing none, we will go on. Does anyone in the audience wish to challenge the qualifications of any of these members of the commission? Hearing none, we're going on again. The public hearing is now open. And we will call for the staff report.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. As you stated, this application is for the Sunshine Mill, requesting approval for additional work done on the silos to include installation of additional entry doors, windows, trimming exterior, wood planters, and wood trim, painting of the head house, as well as installation of a rooftop garden with overhead wind projections. And so what I do, I'm going to see if I can share my screen here with you. Hopefully, we'll see, maybe not. Okay, it doesn't look like I can. Great. Let's see. Okay. I'm trying to share my screen from home and it does not appear that it wants to let me do that.
Is the file open?
File is open. So let's see if I can get. Yeah, apologies. Okay, it doesn't look like it's going to work. So I'm going to, this will be fun. So what, we're going old school, no audio. Are you guys able to see? You guys aren't seeing my screen, are you?
Nope.
We see just you. We see you.
Okay. Well, shoot. Okay, that's not working. Okay, well, so as I stated before, the application, they're doing some modifications. Sunshine Mill is locally landmarked. We've actually brought them before you a couple months, about a month and a half ago, actually. The request before the commission will include everything that I'd listed above. And one of the key reasons for the modifications to the building, and James will probably accentuate some of those issues, are safety in wineries. And a big concern, and when you're dealing with fermentation, is that it creates a CO2 gas. And in order for them to utilize some of these spaces, they need to eliminate that enclosed spaces so that they actually have some airing out. So that'll allow for the oxygen movement throughout the building, and then the harmful gases, which will increase safety for their employees. Going through the findings, the only things, it's kind of difficult to use criteria for this because even though the Sunshine Mill is an inventoried property, we have very limited information with regards to the silos or the large warehouse building. So what staff had suggested was that any addition that is put, a couple of the additions on the top going to finding A10, so some of the wind projections and overhead construction on the top of the building, we're just asking that they go ahead and the essential form and integrity of the building property will be unimpaired, and that the openings will be constructed to match the approved previous openings at the mill and the warehouse and be similar in design. In terms of materials, the applicant is proposing to follow our design guidelines, which is always great, as stated throughout the staff report. The new construction materials that are planned for the projects will include wood, cement, plaster, and wood for the new door opening and trim. So there's no alterations to the existing glass windows as planned with this application, and no changes to the existing glass. So staff has recommended approval and believes that these additions and modifications to the historic property fall within our guidelines and meet the Secretary of Interior standards. Recommended conditions of approval include 8 conditions. Pretty much the basic ones were completed substantial conformance to the pictures and proposals as submitted and reviewed. Number 2 would be prior to construction, that a structural permit will be required with the building codes agency. Number 3 is modification of the facade shall not alter the essential form and integrity of the property. Utmost care must be taken in construction. Number 4, in the event the excavation is necessary, archaeological resources or materials that are discovered will require applicant to stop and have the site professionally evaluated prior to continued excavation. Number 5, new construction should be appropriate materials, provided scale, making a more pedestrian-friendly environment, and to meet historic guidelines. Number 6, the proposed new construction will be undertaken in such a manner that, if removed in the future, the essential form and integrity of this historic building will be unimpaired. Number 7 is regarding cleaning. It just needs to be the gentlest means possible. And then the final is number 8. Painting will be required to follow historic design guidelines approved by city staff prior to work. Do you have staff? I think juice for no slideshow. I can still keep trying.
What happened to you, Dawn?
Did you hear me?
No.
I heard you, but I didn't notice that was the end of your presentation.
Sorry, that's all I've got.
Is that the end of your staff report?
Yeah, so did you hear me read the conditions of approval?
I did not hear you read the conditions of approval, but I have them in front of me, so.
Okay.
I only see 3. No, I see 8, okay. I gotta turn my.
God.
I heard you, Don.
Okay, so I am done, so I'm done. I don't have a slideshow because I can't get it to work. Can you text your brother, tell him I'm in a meeting?
All right, now, we're opening the public hearing, and at this point, we're asking for the opponent, which would be Mr. Martin, to come forward and tell us what he wants to do, and we will have the forum open so we can ask questions of him while he's available. Is he available at all?
You're muted.
He is?
He's muted. There he is.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, now I hear you.
Why
Hi.
doesn't my picture show up?
Because you are.
Everybody else does.
Your camera's not on.
I can share my screen.
All right.
Bob,
James,
did you want him to share his screen?
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Yes, so everything that James has in his slideshow was what I had incorporated in mine. So perfect. James can show you what he's got going. Thanks, James.
Yeah, so let's see, slideshow. Start. As you guys know, the history of the property was to try to develop this over time from a winery into a winery hotel, with the concept that on the top, I'm assuming you can see my cursor.
Yes.
Yes.
So on the top, we would have a crush pad area up here, and then spiraling through the center of the silos down to the bottom where we would have the wine tanks. And over the last couple of years, we have one silo open over here on the southwest corner. And we have experimented with crushing from up there on a very small level. And this year we've got harvest coming upon us, and looking to try to expand those tests into more commercial level production within the silos.
James started it and it just went off screen for me.
What's
I was
that?
doing a presentation.
Oh, hey, Alan. My football coach. I love the Dallas. So conceptually, we're at a place now where we want to try to evolve the property further, expand the hospitality side of it, increase the experience and the interest in people wanting to come to here as a destination experience. And so getting the concrete saw back out and utilizing these silos for more production. And so with that, a real brief explanation here and a little bit of a comparison so everyone gets an understanding of what we're trying to achieve, and from a historical aspect as well. It's just a set of concrete silos. It's not an overly attractive building. In fact, it has a lot of unattractive elements to it, which we struggle with right now. We're trying to keep it looking ancient. At the same time, a great deal of the visitors that come see it and think that the building is still abandoned, even with signage on it. They think maybe it's just advertisement. So we've added a lot of landscaping this year. We started obviously doing movies from the east side as well, and want to shine this artifact into something that still looks old, still looks ancient, but looks more attractive. It's a little bit of a turd that we're trying to polish, really, to be honest with you. So an example of this, this is a development that was put in South Africa. $250 million went into the project. It became, it is today, South Africa's #1 destination. It's actually a silo property where they created a silo museum along with a hotel complex. And so there's an element of modernness that's brought to it, but still the industrial and old nature of the concrete itself is also continued. And the interesting aspects of concrete cutting and then concrete polishing is all these interesting elements that become hopefully components of our design over time. Initially, we're just trying to get access into the silos without dropping from the very top 80 feet down into them. So the first phases of this project that we are trying to do is create functionality and still make these cuts that are substantial. And a concrete saw goes through a tremendous amount of diamond blades to do it. It's an expensive process, even though you would think it's just cutting. It's a very long, expensive process of going through blades as you cut just one element. We have been working with the manufacturer of these saws, trying to work through some understandings of what we could be capable of. We have been in contact with the South African developers and including the person who was responsible for all this beautiful cutting that they did within this property itself. One thing that he explained to us is there's a lot of experimentation that they went through to get to where they were at. And in the end, though, again, #1 destination in South Africa is this very unique property. And here you can see what our original vision was for a hotel in the silos themselves. On the end down here was a concept of some wine bottles, reusing glass bottles and actually stacking them in a rack all the way to the top. That's not what we're proposing today, and nor is it what we're requesting. What we're requesting is activity down here on the very bottom that will allow the production activity to happen, which would eventually become the hotel lobby. And working with the design, some adjustments to the design around functionality of the winery itself, but primarily the same design that the architects from Seattle came up with. So here are some of the primary cuts that are part of the request. This cut right here is probably the most substantial, being that it reaches at almost 14 feet, I believe, in height. This arch is designed so as the hotel design is put in, there's a second floor right here, a mezzanine, that also has a view out from this cut arch. Again, you have a historic property, and it's historic mainly because of the warehouses. They were the distinguished inventoried property that or structures that created the historic designation for the property. The mill and the silos did not create that designation, but within the Historic Landmark Committee rules or regulations, other structures within the property itself could be considered a part of the whole historic property itself. And so even though it wasn't originally an inventoried property, it does point out within those regulations the idea that a silo itself, I don't think they assumed it would be a 12-story concrete structure like this would be historic. And again, it was at one time proposed by the city to tear them down because that was going to be a part of the intersection development. So we're dealing with a kind of a gray area. Is this really historic? Is it really have the attributes of being very attractive as a historic building? It's certainly not like what you're normally dealing with, which is houses that are Victorian or what have you. So we are adding some elements here, but those elements again, and in some of them, one could say, well, it's kind of a modern look, but it's really more of an attribute of the idea of the silos themselves. They're circular structures that have a certain affluence that needs to be brought out in a way, and through doing that, where these particular designs for cuts originated. The idea of circular windows and these arches. Arches, of course, from antiquity all the way to today are seen in all the great architectural projects back, from the Romans building them to, they're an architectural structure that you see throughout ancient times. So, so where are those arches going to be? You can see this silo design here. And on your left-hand side, these are the silos that face towards downtown. So when you're coming into the roundabout, you're going to see the faces of these right here. As you come into the roundabout, of course, you're climbing up, so you're not going to see the bottom of these silos where we're cutting the arches. Street view is a part of your historic landmark requirements too, but it's not viewable. I don't know whether it goes in front of the committee or not. But these three locations face into what we built, which was an amphitheater out of the stones that we found when we were excavating the grounds to create that amphitheater. And those stones were actually from the previous mill that was built in 1880 that had burned down on the grounds. And so we reconstructed this amphitheater here. These again allow an ability to see down the amphitheater, which long-term for the silo hotel is important. Short-term for us, as Don said, what we're looking to achieve is the ability to have expansion of the production facility. It's how we've been able to baby step along through this project, is continually creating occupancy, sometimes at a very low level, but through that occupancy, then over time, the expansion of the utilization of that space becomes more and more valuable, and we can put capital resources towards it. So again, the cuts are designed around the long range plan, which is these silos don't have a lot of benefit, even in a production capacity for a winery. They're actually a workaround. It's not an ideal facility for production, but it is of interest when you're trying to create some dramatic effects and attract people from outside the area to come to see something they haven't seen elsewhere. The west face of the silos again here would have this arch right here on this silo, this arch right here on this silo, which we cut a test spot at one time. And then this third arch up here above this electric house that is on the property itself. So that's the west side of the silos. On the south side of the silos, again, following the need to have open spaces, especially when you're working with wine fermentations and CO2. So creating a couple cut circular holes right here in the silos, giving us the beginnings of the windows for eventually the hotel lobby / production room for the wine. And then on the end here, another one of these arches. And I apologize for the drawing. It was kind of the best that I could do with the technology that I'm capable of. So that's the south side, which these cuttings won't be viewable from the street level either. The roundabout comes up at about this height above it. This corner arch right here, which is, again, like the arches on the west side of the silos in this proposal, will be viewable, a portion of it from the street as you're coming in across the bridge. So then you have, overall, the other portions of the property itself. This would be on the east side of the silos. Right now we have a movie screen over here, so two more of these cuts here, and then on the north side of the silos these cuts as well. This allows us to have, again, complete access to this ground floor, which is about 650 square feet, we think, utilizable space for us to have more wine production area within the mill building itself. So that is the presentation on the cuts themselves. The other parts that Dawn alluded to, which is some wood trim and some overhead wind breaks. We all have seen the sun cells that everyone's utilizing outside. We have a tremendous amount of wind on the top of this building. In fact, when you're working with any architectural design on this, the higher up the building you go, the higher PSI levels. And if I take you up on the roof and you spend a little time with me, you'll see how powerful the wind in the Dalles is. We happen to sit probably in the most ideal place to fly a kite. There's nothing to block the wind traveling across the river and right up the side of the building. And so it comes up the side of the silos here, and then it comes right over the top. And it does it also on the face of the mill building itself. So what we're looking to do is just attach windbreak materials that look similar to the sun sails. They're more like curtains. We're just utilizing guide wires, basically, and there will be some movement as to where they go based on the success of what we're trying to achieve with them. And what we're trying to achieve is not just to establish, we have a roofing issue with this building that we inherited when we got it. And as with everything with this building, it's very large. And at 12,000 square feet of a roof that's concrete, it needs to have a membrane applied to it. And the membrane is pretty substantial. And with that, it allows us, though, the ability to capture the rainwater and reutilize it and expand the roofs into biosphere / garden area. And with that, because you have the parapet walls up there as well, you have a good natural barrier for worrying about anyone falling off. And as we tour people through the mill building, which is what we're currently experimenting with in a COVID environment, the plan this spring was we're going to be opening the building to tours pretty substantially. And we've done all kinds of things. Now we're working on the roof and wanting to get the roof done by before the rains come in. Because what we're having is rain leaking through the concrete itself, and within the leaking of the concrete, water will find its way, and it's creating rust within the rebar that's within the concrete itself, and that rust then swells, and the swelling creates spalling. And so the integrity of the roof itself is still in perfect shape. We've had an engineering firm come out and take a look at it, but if we don't do something, the longer we wait, the bigger the problem is, and the more expensive the repair is. And establishing a green roof for us seems like, by nature of a company that is focused on environmental consequences and trying to establish reuse, this seems like a perfect property to have something like that in the Dalles. So needing to have good windbreak, so any plant material that's up there isn't getting destroyed and dehydrated from the wind itself. Certainly a problem that I suffer in my vineyards right now. And also the employees that are up there. and anything that they're utilizing, trying to keep it on the roof itself. So there'll be times and days where we may not have the windbreaks up, but there'll be times where we will. And again, they'll look similar to the cell. They will be being adjusted and moved around. But this allows us to have a better control system of one environmental hazard that we have on the roof itself. Thirdly, this interesting structure on the top of the silos is called the head house. And the head house is where we are doing some crush production, again, that allows us to have kind of a dramatic effect of a gravity flowing production winery, which is ideal. You're not pumping the juice or the must. But within that head house itself, it was built in a very practical manner. Don't think it was architecturally designed like the mill building itself. In fact, it's actually a two-part structure where they built the first 6 silos, and at the time that the mill was built, and then the second 6 silos were built 10 or 15 years later. And so the head house itself is actually mostly an afterthought over the top of the second set of silos. And so structurally it's very sound, but again, the attractiveness of it is very limited. The mill itself is obviously more attractive. So trying to add some elements to it that still keeps it looking like it's a concrete building, but gives it a little bit of warmth and allows us to frame the silos in a way that makes it more attractive than having this quite ugly looking building on the top of the silos. And so what we're looking to do is on these roof lines on the top of the building itself, to add some wood across these up here, and same with on these silo pieces that come out here. We could just paint it another color, but we don't think it gives it quite some finesse and beauty that we want to add. A little bit of warmth by adding some wood to this very industrial building itself. So trimming out the building with wood, you know, stained wood. It will be something we have to maintain, but it's a building that we have the equipment to go up and down the side of and maintain already. We like to interact with the property that way. And so that's what we're looking to achieve on that. Questions?
Thank you. At this point, is there anyone that on the commission that would like to ask a question?
I have a question, James. So how do you guys plan on cleaning all this before you paint it all? Are you gonna just like pressure wash it, or how have you cleaned it in the past?
Yeah, we just completed a pressure washing on the building itself. And you can see the silos themselves, especially on this west side. We think that they applied a coating on the east side silos, maybe at the time that they built it, but some sort of coating or something. The paint seems to hold up well on that side. On this side, we're seeing more and more of this distressed look, which could be, again, an enhancement if it was framed well. Right now it's not framed well because the head house over the top of it looks pretty antiquated. So dressing up the head house a little bit may allow us to keep this kind of distressed look on the silos itself. And on the base of the silos here, you can see this kind of rim here. It's painted black, but most of the black paint is gone. We'll be bringing that black paint back. It's definitely a project like, you know, when you're working within your home where you do something and then you need to take a step back and take a look at it and decide how much further you want to go. We've always tried to feel like removing anything is very painful for us. So we've been able to try to work around everything within the building itself, and even on the exterior, there's within the family itself, there's a love for this really distressed paint look. And you'll see these kinds of things in Europe too, where they'll have a really well finished component up here, maybe even something right down between the silos here. But then there's one area that's still just kept as it is. And so I think we're still trying to achieve that. Going back and just painting these a bright white isn't something really attractive, but not having it framed into something and having something that makes it not look abandoned is the goal.
Thank you.
Bob, can I ask a question? This is Donna.
Yes.
So your plans for a future hotel, I've always been curious about the fire suppression issue. How will that be handled if there were to be a fire there?
Sprinklers, and then the building itself, because it produced wheat flour, created a carbon dust that was highly explosive. So within the entire facility is a fire sprinkler system already, and carbon dust that was made with flour is highly explosive. So there's a huge amount of ventilation throughout the building to try to offset these micro explosions that would happen daily within the making of flour. So this structure is 100% concrete. The wood that we're putting on there is just going to be a small amount of trim. As a hotel itself, it would have a state-of-the-art sprinkler system put in it, and most of it going all the way up would be platforms. They basically a metal platform with concrete poured all the way up. And the great thing about the mill building is the amount of fire suppression water that comes in from the city for it. So we already have two large, I think they're 9-inch main lines that come in for the fire suppression system itself. And so we have adequate amount of water for a fire suppression sprinkler system long term.
But nothing could be done from the outside, right? Because it's too tall. We don't have trucks that can handle that height. Is that a problem?
Actually, the part of the requirement when we first started the project was to work with fire marshal. We actually had 3 fire marshals we had to go through because the property itself is technically a skyscraper. So it's the only skyscraper in the gorge. And so the fire department, we have outside fire hydrants for them to hook into. They do have ladder trucks that can reach the height of, along with the fire hoses themselves, they can reach the top of the building.
Really? Wow.
May I enter in here just a little, please? And my understanding of the Landmark Commission is that technically we are interested in the outside of the building. I lost you. We are interested in the appearance of the building to keep it historic looking as it was when it was constructed. And future uses of the building are not going to be on our criteria, if I understand this.
That is correct, Bob.
So, it's interesting to dream, but right now we're trying to protect the historic features of this building, and that's what we should hold our criteria to. So, I am interested, when you do put a garden up there, is there any problem with very few places in the Dells? Are you going to be able to see it anyhow? But are we creating something that looks non-historic with a growing roof in 1900s?
That's a question for me. I don't think you'll be able to see it from the street level or anywhere else. Maybe when you're coming down at the top of Brigade.
Yes.
Possible.
Bob, I might be wrong on this, but I thought in one of our last meetings we were discussing how we don't really have control over the rooftop of buildings.
No, we don't. To my knowledge, now we don't have. But where will this fit then? Do we even have an issue to discuss?
So, Bob, okay, Eric, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that he's not really requesting the rooftop garden at this time anyway. So I did have a couple of questions though. One, well, first an observation that it clearly is a historic building and a historic property. It meets all of the qualifications for both our local ordinance and also probably for the National Register of Historic Places. So that's not really a question. And then as far as, this is just an observation too, I know we'd had an issue with the person that's done some work on the Elks building having his assessment go up. And I didn't know whether you didn't have investigated the special assessment program through the state for buildings that are listed on the National Register, because that could freeze your assessment at the pre-improvement stage. So that might be something to look at earlier on in the process rather than later on in the process. And then also if it is listed in the register, there are also rehabilitation tax credits that might be something that make this project more affordable. But you know, there are things that you need to, if you're interested, investigate sooner rather than later. And then as far as this whole project goes, I'm just a little concerned. I don't have much trouble with things because I know that buildings have to be brought into a current use to make them viable. But I think maybe adding the trim up to the top of the silos and the head house would be adding a feature that is not part of the historic structure. And so I think that's something that's kind of looked on as a no-no in our ordinance and also in the Secretary of the Interior standards that would go by. So at least it would be my preference that we kind of avoid adding those features to the building that are kind of additive to it. And that's it.
I had a question. It's Doug. Jim, on the east end of the building, there are those two wine bottle shapes. Could you tell me something about those? Or are those in or out? Or
Well, I think that, you know, we're obviously in a pretty long-term vision mode and less about what would actually happen there. At the time that this was designed in 2009, that was something that was a possible outcome for the design when we built it for a hotel. At this point, I honestly don't spend any time thinking about that component of the building itself, whether we could actually do it or not. I think that I think we all struggle, and I know Dawn does, with the fact that when we started the project, there was not really an expectation at that time within city planning that this was considered a historic component of the property, or that it was historic even, and so it wasn't treated that way when we started with planning. And we raised a tremendous amount of money from the federal government around the idea that it wasn't. And so it wasn't even a consideration that, geez, how would you ever build these two bottles when the property was historic? Because no one at that time even thought about it that way. So I think it's this 300 or 900 pound gorilla that we're all trying to deal with as we continue with the idea that we can continue to develop this property, when initially there wasn't any thought that we would have historic components as a piece of it. So, so whether we would have these on the side now, I think it's, you know, it's kind of a three-legged race where we're now tied to the Historic Landmark Commission as well on this project. And I'm not that attracted to the idea of the bottles at this point, if that makes you feel any better.
That makes me feel better.
I mean,
I don't think design-wise it's compatible with the rest of the building.
Back to your kind of Barnum and Bailey showman sometimes trying to get people to come to the Dalles. No one thinks of the Dalles as a destination. So the idea was having the world's largest wine bottles, and that people would come from a distance to see them and walk up through the inside of them and illuminate them with LEDs, etc. But you know, I think again in the world of a COVID environment too, anything that we're doing right now seems really speculative. You know, building a hotel when hotel occupancy is way down right now. Certainly, you're not going to get a bank behind anything like this or an investor. So I think we're making those small steps as we have to make the property more viable. We won't be building the bottles anytime soon. And we certainly ask our art teacher before we started anything like that.
Well, if I may go back, you kind of took me a little bit side here. I went back and picked up the request before the commission is for work. And in that list of things that you are requesting permission for is a rooftop garden with an overhead wind protection. Now, that is what I read they requested for. And so that's what I was referring to. Pardon?
I see that now. I'm sorry I missed that.
And also, what I haven't been able to find in any of your prints is what you have in mind for planters around the door trims. What are you using for door trim around the doors that you're cutting in? And what is the planter going to look like? I make some terrible looking planters, and I've got to cost you.
The door trim for the for these openings that we're cutting? Is that what you're asking?
You're asking, it says here that you will put wood planters and exterior trim around the silo building, and I'm presuming that
Again, up here, what we're talking about is the wood trim, but the trim itself is also the edge of a planter, so we can plant some things that would across here and across here plant. So it's trim, but it's also an area to plant, and that allows plant material, some vines to hang down, kind of like you know, hanging Gardens of Babylon or something. Again, back to trying to frame in these silos and give it some life and give it some interest, is to have some, as you can see right here in this image here, do you see these vines kind of hanging down?
Yes, I'm noticing those, and I think they're very artistic, and the arches that you are proposing up there is a whole new roof structure, or is that going to be arches cut in the existing silo?
In this proposal, we haven't made any decisions about the hotel piece. You know, as far as the rest of everything that's on the roof up here, that's pretty far down the road right now.
Well, because definitely if you put this wind protection up there with supports that are anyhow in relationship to the photograph you're showing, that is going to change the historic character of this building immensely. Now, I understand by the cutting of the holes in the west side is a bell ringer, and it's open, but I don't, if you can trim those back and make them look like they're something other than a hole cut in the concrete like you have on the south side, then maybe we aren't doing too much damage.
So
I'm sorry.
that's right, James. Let me go ahead, kind of jump in here, and I'm going to kind of echo what Eric said too. Is what we've had here is some silos that have stood vacant for many, many years, and yes, your job is to protect historic buildings as well as look to ensure that those buildings will remain. So, I mean, there's options here that could include demolition. However, what James and his company and his family have been looking to do is to still bring and keep that piece of history that remains in our community, as well as provide a new use for those silos. So obviously they can't, or they haven't been used as silos for years. They've been remaining vacant. You know, and obviously I could talk with him about special assessment. We'd have to get the property nationally landmarked in order to do so. But in looking at it, I think the direction that the Historic Landmark Commission needs to take is one of definitely trying to ensure that the design guidelines are met, as well as historic preservation guidelines, but also taking just a realistic approach as to what else, what are the other options for this. And what James and his family have provided is definitely a very artistic approach, which as you all know, me being an art teacher's kid, is something that I go, wow. But it's also a realistic approach in terms of, you know, what else could be used for that building. So just kind of keeping that in mind, we do want to see that building remain. At least I would like to see it remain, and I would love to see it reused. And I think that by doing that and doing it appropriately, I think that it would be meeting our historic regulations. So that's just my 2 cents.
I would add that, Dawn, I think part of what you're saying is that they need probably some latitude. You're cutting round holes in a curved surface, and I don't think that you're necessarily, or we're not going to necessarily be able to put the same guidelines on those curved surfaces and going through concrete that you would on a traditional building. I think there's going to have to be latitude where some of what we would normally recommend wouldn't work.
And I would agree, Doug. And again, you know, what was a silo used for? To store grain. So really, any reuse of it is you're going to have to be pretty, not necessarily flexible, but no, actually you do. I think you would have to be pretty flexible in how you would allow, or, you know, what you would allow, maybe a little bit more than what you would for, you know, a flat-faced building. The big challenge, and it sounds like James already been working with engineer, is getting this through the building codes phase. And what he's dealing with is an existing building type. And he talked about the fire suppression system. And so that all comes with a building permit. And they ensure that everything is meeting our current structural specialty or current structural code, as well as electrical, plumbing, and any mechanical permitting. So he's, you know, we're the exterior view looking for the visual. He'll be dealing with, you know, many other people and regulations that will, you know, guide and or potentially bring it back to us, asking for us to take a look at another option because it didn't work at the building codes phase.
I think those are all great points. I think maybe the last thing is what we have to do is create something that feels attractive enough that people want to come here to see it, and people feel comfortable bringing their family or their children or there and willing to feel like it's special enough to spend money. None of this can happen if there isn't some form of ROI. We need a return on our investment. We need this property to perform in an interest with the consumer. Otherwise, we don't achieve the objective of being able to make it sustainable economically. And right now, it's again, because we've developed everything else around it and made everything else restored. This is the last step of making the property feel like a place that's sexy enough to drive from Seattle down to see the Sunshine Mill and walk silos, you know, see the winery. That's the goal. But if it's still awkward and we're committed to only making it look like it was, then again, we're going to struggle with that. It's already hard enough to get people to come, you know, to the Dalles, Oregon, because there's so much more competition out there for an interest, people-centric, especially in the wine business. We're not known as a wine region. We're trying to put this on the map, but realistically, Willamette Valley is $2 billion economic powerhouse in the wine business. So
I don't know from listening how you would trim a door arch, but I'm not that type of a carpenter. And that's what I was wondering on these west surfaces. If we put those in and trimmed them up, would we soon be said that was a big addition to the historicness of this building, or they're not going to fit the way it is now? They're not part of the historic structure. There's no question. So, what does Chippo say on this point, Don?
In terms of like the landscaping or planter boxes?
No, I mean about changing the whole character, the whole plane of a silo. That's what they looked at when they said this is an historic place. It was a silo. But if they start to modify it and make it something other than a silo, what did Chippo think? Are they going to give you the green light?
So we kind of go back, and Eric is correct that this property definitely has structures that are historic and meet guidelines in terms of, you know, Secretary of Interior standards, as well as this, you know, our local meetup design features and or significance for our local landmarking. We probably need to take a look at doing survey again and bringing other structures that were not originally included in inventory sheets, such as James's property here. However, and I did have my 5-year CLG review, and one of the things that we talked about, and I think I shared with you, was that we want to take a look at our design features. And Curry had suggested also that we take a look at, you know, providing a little more flexibility in our code if we want to. I mean, again, this is the commission. However, I really kind of go back to, if we did not allow some flexibility and or reuse for our current use, that if we did not do that, then what we'd be doing is basically, I think we'd be running into, you know, having buildings that would end up either being requested to be demolished and or buildings that would be demolition by neglect because people couldn't afford or couldn't find any reuse of the building that, you know, financially made any sense. So in terms of SHPO, what they want is that they want a building restored, obviously, to its historic glory if possible. However, they also understand that there is a need for reuse and some sort of modification in order to allow that to happen. So I'm not sure when we get to the next phase and cutting windows, and, you know, obviously we'd be looking at a land use application to change the use of the building if they did go, you know, follow through with the final or the big picture. Then at that time, you know, we may want to bring Curry in on some conversations about what do you think and any regulations and or restrictions that you would suggest. But I think this is kind of the baby step to get some reuse of that building, because it's just basically real estate sitting there without any use in it. And if we want James's business to continue to expand and or, you know, to thrive in our community, I think we need to look at trying to figure a way to allow for that building to be reused. Okay, I'll stop.
I can't disagree with the words you've said so far. I think you're perfect there, but I just wonder how much authority that we want to extend to ourselves to make this happen.
And as a certified local government, Bob, that is you are given that authority to to decide how you want to apply. Obviously, well, we want it to be within the interior guidelines, but yes, you are a body that is able to make that decision.
Don, is there some flexibility too within the fact that this is not within the guidelines themselves? It talks about the buildings and all the different things that have to happen on a historic building, etc. But then when it talks about a silo, it's just a single word: silo, this,
Right.
that, all those things that are a part of the property itself but are not historic. Do they end up hitting the same guidelines? You have to do these temporary
They do. And
Okay.
it's kind of, so Forrest brought this up at I'm not sure if it was the last meeting and you may have not been there. And sometimes there are some historic components and or buildings in our inventory, whether it be local inventory or on a National Register inventory, is that they don't meet our design guidelines, because sometimes our design guidelines are a little bit more of commercial and or residential in nature. And we have quite a few industrial type buildings, not obviously silos like your building, but the old Don's Cleaners. I mean, that building, we don't really have, design guidelines that address, in an instance, windows. And when we reviewed that, it says wood windows are preferred in our design guidelines, but wood windows were not original to that building. So it didn't make sense. Similar to yours, where it is more of a metal type building frame. So we do need to do a little bit of work on revising and possibly bringing in some more industrial type design guidelines. And maybe that's something that we'll be looking at. So yeah, I mean, you're very unique, and you don't want to put in regulations if you're the only silo we've got in town that's specific only to a silo. But we want to provide something that in a situation it allows the commission to use their best educated minds to make a decision that fits for that building and in our community.
Well, I'm not really versed, but we have used the fact that that is an historic building to help preserve it to this point. And then all of a sudden say, well, that isn't a good handle anymore. We don't want to call it a historic building. We want to call it something we can use. I don't know if that is a proper approach. I'm sorry I said that, maybe, huh? You're at least laughing, James. I agree with what we're saying here, but I also know what we have to work with is in ink also.
This is, I would say when you look at it, if it was a home where what we're talking about is a tool. The mill building itself is actually that too. It's a giant flour mill. It's a big tinker toy contraption all built together, and they built a structure around it. It's like building a box around this tool. The silos themselves, they're just holding tanks. They're just that. They're not we're not talking about a home or something else. And what we're trying to do is actually take holding tanks and apply the idea that aesthetically they came with some sort of historical value. And therefore, through that historical value, we have to preserve that and protect that. And I think that sure, within the letter of law, you could create that kind of interpretation. But I think the overall meaning of why you're here, when you look at the very top goal, is trying to preserve historic nature that inspires people, that makes them feel like they're a part of something in a place, etc. This building is not. It's just holding tanks. We're trying to keep it still in that appearance, in that form, but add what it was lacking when it was first built. So if that isn't why you're here, is otherwise if it's just letter of the law, Don could just do that all day long. Check the boxes, it comes in. It's not the same as it was before. Check the box, it's out of here. Instead, we created a committee that can go ahead and apply its good sense towards things and not be overly practical or overly principled. You're here to apply that human element that makes people have emotional connections to property and buildings. And we think these steps will allow for that to continue to head that direction. Was that shiny enough? Is that good, Bob? I'm ready to speak at Rotary.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm trying to find a way other than resigning right here so I don't have to violate our own rules. If you understand. Now, someone else can talk here. What are you thinking, Eric?
Well, I think we have been given some flexibility, right? And I think the flexibility is in probably the reuse of the building. I mean, I'm sure there's buildings that have, and this is one of the things SHPO realizes that sometimes buildings have to adapt to survive. And I think this is probably one of those cases. We'd like to see them kind of adapt in a way that is keeping with their historic character and that kind of minimizes the impacts of the modern needs. So I guess it's always a kind of a balancing act.
But do you think we have the authority to say, go ahead and do this as this landmark commission?
Oh yeah, I think that's what the whole certified local government thing is. I think if this building was on the National Register and was on the special assessment, that authority would not lie with us, that would lie with SHPO. But SHPO has granted us as a certified local government the authority to make decisions on these kind of local issues.
That is correct,
That's
yes.
what's making me feel better. I want you to know that. I'm feeling better. Doug, did we lose you?
What?
Are you listening there? You've got an opinion. You've been in this town a long while. What will you think if you look up one day and the silos are no longer recognizable as grain silos?
Well, they're going to be recognizable because of just their shape and their mass. I think that some holes, windows, doors, and such cut in them is not going to, it'll change them, but I don't think that that's going to be dramatic enough that people are going to know they were silos, and then doing that, why then they can be productive part of the community. I don't see anything wrong with it myself. I think it's a good idea. It's kind of like throwing a lump of clay on a potter's wheel and all of a sudden you make something cool out of it. And I think that's what Jim's trying to do.
Thank you. I want you to know that, in my opinion, unless I fix myself, we're still in open session for this. We're taking public comments. We don't have many more publics to get in here. Donna's been in. Boris, you're kind of a newcomer. Bev, I haven't forgotten you, but Boris, you're kind of a newcomer. You've seen our town. You're getting an idea how this group is working. Have you got an opinion you want to put in here?
I actually think it would make the town prettier, because that's like one of the first things you see coming into that side of town. And they're saying, it's not the prettiest thing to look at right now. And so maybe if it was sprucened up, that top house was a fresh coat of paint on it. Yeah, maybe I'll pull over now and take a look at what's going on over there.
Well, one thing about it, it is true that it's a winery now, was a flour mill, and I don't think they needed a grain silo in any winer operation I've seen. So we've got to kind of keep that there, but are we destroying something that we can't replace? That's what I'm asking.
Bob, I think, can I speak?
Yeah, certainly. You're next.
Well, good. I'm fairly new at this, on this committee too, but I think that we could lose some of this history if we are not flexible to allow them to to make these changes to make a viable business. And I think they've been doing a fabulous job and bringing lots of people into our community because they've kept with the history that you know, everyone's been inside the winery, and I think they're embracing that. But to get to the next step, I think if we're not flexible and don't let these things happen, it's never going to be another flower silo. But the hotel idea is pretty fantastic. I think we should. It will fall apart, and we'll lose it if we don't kind of support some of these entrepreneurs that are really taking some chances and trying to make it special. I've actually had. We have our little Trevitt house. I've actually had guests come all the way from Seattle to do the movie thing that they have there. So thank you. I mean, they're doing some stuff that works, and it is bringing people into our little town. So I think, you know, I'm for it.
Okay, well now,
So, Bob, I got one more comment. So, and there's one thing that I kind of failed to put in the staff report, and if there's anybody that could tell you how the operations of that Sunshine Mill originally, you know, what it was built for, the years, James and his family provide tours and give that piece of history, whether they're modifying it or not. So when you walk in there, yes, you'll learn about their business and their, you know, entrepreneur and their fabricating, well, not fabricating, I guess it's not. So they're making of wines, but they also tell the story about the Sunshine Mill. And that, to me, if there is a bonus that, you know, I wish that'd be a condition we could attach to anybody that comes in, is that you are required to tell everybody that walks in that building the history of this building. And the great thing about that building is people walk in there, and that's one of the first questions that they probably ask James or one of his employees is, what is this? And what is the Sunshine Mill? And the great thing, and it kind of gives me goosebumps, is everybody in there knows the story, and we get to hear that history. And I wish I had just a little bit of what they all know, just like Eric talking about the Chinese block last meeting. I wish I could be a sponge and take that all in and remember it. And I think that when we have sites and developers that are looking at rehabbing a facility and still keeping that history alive, I think that we're doing our job. And I feel really, really good about the Sunshine Mill doing that job. So I'll get off my pulpit.
is there the coal that we've been talking about cutting in the sides of the silo? It's pretty well we're under agreement before we close this public hearing and rule out talking to James again. But how do we want to handle our rooftop garden as an addition to this program? How do we want to handle it? Do we want to discuss it, or we want to do anything with it? And I'm open for somebody to give me some guidance.
Well, this is Eric. This is Eric. I just, I don't know. I think the garden, for the most part, unless there's vines growing over the side, is not really going to be visible. So I don't have any issues with it. And even the vines growing over the side should be kind of fine, especially if they don't paint it, and then it'll look completely abandoned.
What about the wind?
Which is kind of cool.
The wind part up there, our sunshade roof support for it, is that going to be acceptable?
Well, my understanding is they can take them down if it's a not windy day, so it wouldn't be a permanent fixture up there. I might be wrong in that.
Well, the only concept I have seen is James's photograph there of, on the roof, and it stuck up. Well, it would be up only 4 feet higher than his railing. His railing is 8 feet, and the towers were going to be up at 12. So the corner towers, I understood, but I didn't know there was a center support for that, which is talking about now in these pictures. And that is gonna add to the skyline look.
I don't think we're looking to put anything of permanence up. We're looking to, again, utilize these as tools where we've got a severe wind issue there. We can attach anchor points off the water tower building for most of it, we think. Some of it will come, attached down to potential railings. But most likely what we'll be doing is moving them around over time, just like any umbrellas or sunshades or where we're trying to prevent the elements from affecting the biological entities, whether it's people or plants, trying to help the environment. Obviously, there's not as much need to have them up during the winter. Our winds start here, late April, and pretty much get away by September. And again, we might find that it's not working well here, so we're going to reattach it over here, or we're going to screw something in over here. And if they're not permanent structures, I'm not sure where that falls. Dawn probably has a better idea. But mainly just trying to have, the ability to curtain things up when we need it. And we don't want them up when we don't need them either.
I'm just looking at the photograph that we've been used earlier, James. I don't have the technology to put it on my camera, I don't believe, but it shows some sort of a 4 or 5 shaped sunshade up on that roof. You'll have to have something, or just suspend it with cables, I guess.
Bob, I think that was their 2009 design, so that's a little outdated.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah.
that was around in the original design. The thought that for the elevators, we may have to have a structure on the top, and that was a part of that.
Okay.
Again, at
But
this
we don't have a sketch then of what this will look like other than 4 posts. That is the only sketch we have. An article that says 4 posts 8 feet high and corner posts 12 feet high.
That's for the railings itself, yeah.
Yeah.
And we had the images of the posts with the wires. So there's images of where we're just we're using what it's already being used for railings on the property. Same design.
Okay, does anyone else got questions of Mr. James Martin? If not, we'll close the public hearing and deliberate amongst us commissioners.
I do have one more question.
Okay.
So on the south and southeast side, where you're planning on cutting the holes in the silo, right below where the movie screen is now, there's a substantial drop-off. Are there plans in the future for stairs there, or is that just going to be a drop in front of these openings?
There would be a ramp, just groundskeeping ramp. Just a metal ramp that we use when we're opening that area for production. So.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had, Bob.
If there's no further questions of Mr. Martin, thank you for your presentation. And now we as commissioners will discuss amongst ourselves any further questions, but don't go too far. We might have questions for you. So I'm opening it up for someone to comment, someone to make motions, someone to do something.
Well, I think this is good. If anyone opposes it, I mean, I would like to hear it, but I think we should go forward with it, and I would make a motion for it.
Excuse me, has the public hearing closed?
Yes. I'm sorry. I felt my hand. The public hearing was closed about 30 seconds ago.
Thank you.
So now we are trying to hold our conversation amongst us, and we might borrow staff. We have a motion now that we approve. Wait till I turn my papers upside down one more time. I'll get there. Here we go. That we approve application.
I would second Forrest's motion.
You'll second that motion?
Yes.
You know,
I think, you know, thinking about that building, how would it be to take your kids in a round room with a round window looking out? How cool. It'd be like being in a Hobbit house. I think it's a great idea.
Okay, we have a motion to approve application 181-20. And I am presuming that you have no additions or changes on the conditions of approval. Recommend conditions of approval. There is 8. Yes, 8. If you read those, and I'm sure you want to incorporate those in your motion.
Yes. Thank you, Bob.
And did I hear a second?
I made a second. Doug Leese, I made a second.
Okay, Paula, have you got this down now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I didn't want to run off and leave you. You're very important to us. We're going to vote on. We're going to vote on resolution application 181-20 with the conditions of approval. All in favor, say aye, and please identify yourself as you say it.
Doug Leese, aye.
Bev Eggy, aye.
Forrest, aye.
Bob
Eric
McNary,
Gleason,
aye.
aye.
Get it up, vote, Paula?
Thank you, I'm set.
Pardon?
I'm all set, Bob, thank you.
Okay. All right. Application 181-220 has been approved. Now we should go without reading the rules and the regulations again to Mr. and Mrs. Sanders. And they have been waiting patiently here, and we're good to see you. This is application, Landmark Commission application 182-20, Charles and Connie Marie Sanders at 531 West 3rd Place. And the request there is for an extension to a driveway. And I think this one's going to be a little less complicated, if you don't mind me forecasting.
I hope so.
Staff, if you got a report.
I do. So, whoops. Oh, I'm not. Okay. So I do. The application, as you stated, is for Connie and Charles. Connie Marie and Charles Sanders. The property is located at 531 West 3rd Place, and the house is actually known as the Merrill House. As stated in the inventory sheet, in the National Trevitz Historic District, it's a ranch-style home that was built in the 1950s. And I've actually talked with Connie Sue's mom a few years ago, and she had some information that sounded like it was more towards like 47, 48 when it was constructed. So we're pretty close on the date. Okay, so it's a one-story building, rectangular in plan with hip roof and a daylight basement that opens up onto the backyard. So let's see, I think I might be able to share my screen. Maybe not. Nope, it didn't work. Uh-oh, I bumped out. Okay, well, the slideshow isn't going to work again. But as stated, the request from the applicants is not only to provide a driveway to access the rear of the property, but it's also to replace the front yard fencing. And just giving a little bit of history, as you are all aware, this property is located right next to the Mill Creek and the 6th Street Bridge. And originally what Charles and Connie Sue wanted to do was provide a secondary access that was closer to the bridge and to access the rear of their property. However, the planning department and the regulations that we have in terms of additional access points on an arterial road would not allow for them to get that secondary access, even though they did have the frontage allowable. So what the Sanders decided to do was take a look at the only other option that they had was to utilize their existing driveway and provide just a driveway path through their front yard and to access through the rear. Also, as you've seen in some of the photos that were provided by the applicant, some of the fencing was, it needs to be repaired and or replaced. We're not able to find any historic photos showing if that was original fencing. It could or could not be. It doesn't appear to be. And what the Sanders are proposing
It was not
is
original.
Okay, something that's a little bit more, that's in natural material, so it'll be metal as well as wood, and just be 4 foot in height. Because it doesn't appear, in terms of design guidelines, I don't really have anything that states what a ranch style fencing would be, so that's why I went ahead and added that as a part of this application, because typically I would just approve that. So in terms of conditions, staff believed that modifications that are requested and improvements to the site within historic design guidelines, and that we feel that the changes and we are requesting that it's approved with the conditions of approval 1 through 5, which include work will be completed substantial conformance with the pictures and proposals as submitted and reviewed. Number 2, if any archaeological resources or materials are discovered during excavation, the applicant shall stop excavation and have the site professionally evaluated prior to continuing work. Number 3, materials used for the new fence shall be wood and metal and consistent with the submitted photos and drawings. Number 4, any surface cleaning of the house will be required gentle without sandblasting or chemicals involved. And then finally, number 5, the applicant shall ensure the driveway is not used to park vehicles that would obstruct the public's visual access to the historic structure. Do you have any questions of staff?
Anyone have a question of Don?
I think I saw it somewhere in the report here, but the fencing doesn't touch the house, right, Don?
That is correct. It does not attach to the house. I just went ahead and put the condition for the cleaning of the house just in case they plan to do any painting and or cleaning.
Any further questions of staff before I talk to Sanders to give us their opinion on why they want to do this?
I would want to ask Don, in the drawing that they proposed, the driveway, the 10-foot driveway that they would like to put in, goes from the cement pad that goes off of 3rd Street, parallel to the front of the house, turns and goes towards the creek, and then it ends right at the back of the house. I looked at that property twice. Today I went back and tried to look down over the bank. I don't understand the driveway that's going parallel with the house towards the creek. That's a bank. I don't see how they could extend that road down.
Yeah.
There's going down over the bank. There's I think it's a concrete wall or brick of some kind. And then there's a wrought iron fence on that, and then it drops over again. And I don't know how they were going to handle that.
Okay, so that's something we can probably go ahead and ask the applicants when we open up the public hearing open up the public comment. I think, yeah, that's the only thing, and you're right, there is a little bit of a bank. They provided that in some of their photo, and it shows some, it almost looks like ivy, like a little berm of ivy that is there. So it looks like there'll be some excavation that'll be necessary, and I did add that condition. So if that does come up, but Charles and Connie Sue are here, so if that's, they could probably answer that question when Bob's ready for them to ask, to make comments.
Are you satisfied for a minute, Doug?
Yeah, I didn't know where I was supposed to throw that in.
Okay.
When I went to look at the property, I couldn't see how they could do that, but.
Let's ask the opponents what they have to say. They've been very patient with us. So the floor is yours. I don't know who's going to make the presentation. You, sir, or is your wife gonna do the heavy lift?
We're both here. Thank you. Can
Okay.
you hear me? Okay. We had, yes, there is a bank there. There is a retaining wall. The driveway will go down next to the retaining wall. Years ago, when my folks first had this property, that was all cleaned out. My father wanted to put a roadway down there, but my mother was very much against it because she felt that that would relieve the city of their responsibility to keep the creek clean. And if any of you have been to city council years ago, you are familiar with my mother. But yes, we've had a contractor come out and look at it, and there will be excavation down to the back, and where there, and it will end at the end of that retaining wall. And Mr. Leash, if you want to come out, and we're more than happy to take you down there. So that will, as far as the driveway is concerned, actually, I don't think anybody will really even see too much of it because it will be a flat driveway across the front of the yard and then make the turn and go down the hill.
They're mostly just going to haul in a whole lot of rock and build up that slope so it's actually able to drive down. And they'll pave the top of that as well.
What material was that driveway going to be made out of?
It's going to have asphalt off. Same as
Asphalt?
Yes. What's up the drive?
And that would go down over the bank also? The whole thing would be
Yes, it
asphalt?
would go down, yes, all the way down to the end of the retaining wall.
Boy, that's steep. You won't be going down there in the winter.
Well, he's going to build it up. He's going to raise it, so it's angle. So it's going to be more fill than excavation? Yes, pretty much.
And if you see, I didn't think to submit the pictures because they're in an old album, but when my folks first moved into this house, that whole bank there had no ivy. It was all cleaned off. So it's been overrun over the past few years. My dad had it all landscaped. He was much younger when he moved into this house than we are now. But then over the years, he received several beautification awards for keeping it up. And as you were able to walk down there, but he had to haul everything by hand up and down. And it was somewhat easier to do it then, but he hauled a lot of it up and roped some of it up. And we would like to eliminate that, having to do that, if at all possible.
May I get back in here, please?
But can I answer one? I want to add one additional
Yeah,
thing.
you can get in here, but I want to get in also. You first.
Okay. So when we did the 6th Street, when we redid the bridge, and a few of you were involved in that decision, the city had updated or required that updates be made to all access points. And Connie Sue is correct. I remember seeing her father and mother. Actually, they had a little bit better access to the rear, over closer to the bridge that they used on occasion. So they don't have that capability any longer because of our design standards and our requirements. So the city did kind of put some limitations on the access back there. So it's kind of something that we had pushed or forced on this property. So hopefully we're able to get them some access to the rear.
Now, may I ask staff a question?
Yes.
I'm looking at our drawing, which is very good, done very accurately. We're only talking about an application to extend within the last 4 feet or 6 feet. I didn't count the squares of the house. We are not talking about something that is it's historic because it's a historic area, but we are granting permission to build a road or an alley or anything other than that. We are talking about building something that's across the front lawn. Am
That
I
is correct.
mistaken?
That is correct. So this is for a driveway that it is disturbing and or modifying the landscaping, which is part of that property, which is required, why it's required to come before the Historic Landmark Commission.
So how much work it does after the end of my drawing is not what I understood our application covered.
Correct. Well, yeah, it doesn't. So it's basically the driveway is what you're approving or reviewing, excuse me, and
Yeah.
the fencing. That is
Right.
all you are reviewing. So any type of development to the rear, let's say, you know, a year or two down the road, they decide to build a big shop back there for Charles, then they will have to come back before and go through a review process and work with me, not only on the planning side, but also with you and me on the historic landmark side. But at this time, it's just a driveway and just a fence.
Fine, that makes it a little more
Yep.
simple, and I tried to tell them we were gonna get done quickly, so if we stay with what our drawing is, we ought to be able to puzzle this out real quickly. So I didn't call last time because I don't know where they would have been. Is there anyone out there that is, thank you, Charles and Connie, for a minute, stand by. Is there anyone out there that would like to speak against this? Hearing none, we will ask any commissioners, if you have, look at your printout and look at where the fence is, look at where they put out in my print is a kind of a copper colored driveway. And that is as far as our criteria goes for today, I think. John can correct me. You're not going to? Okay. So if you got any more questions of the landowners, the applicants, that pertains to this application?
I just have one quick one, Bob.
Yeah.
So on the diagram, it says that the driveway is going to be 2 feet from the fence.
Right.
How much space is there between the driveway and the house? Is that like dangerously close or butting up against it?
No.
Let there, go. That's why you're here, ma'am. Go right ahead. Give me some answers.
Foot from the sidewalk to where the road comes.
There probably, when I was over there, if the driveway, if there's 2 feet over from the fence and the driveway, the new one is 10 feet, probably the distance from the driveway to the house would be somewhere between 10 and 15 feet, I would think.
Yeah.
It isn't a real big yard.
Thanks, Doug.
I just want to, pardon, go ahead.
It's not ideal for us either than having a driveway in our front yard, but that's the only option that we have in order to be able to access the back area.
I wanted to ask you if you've had the privilege. Many years ago, I was doing something different than I am now. And we had a lawn area that we had to put in the middle of the kind of a 4-lane street. And they had us prepare and lay pavers that the grass grew through. So they laid pavers out there and then seeded it. And after that, they run the mower over it just as though it was grass. But you could drive their trailers and their lawnmower trucks on it. I don't know if where those pavers are now, if they're still in existence, I don't know. But it would still give you a sense of a green lawn out there.
So Bob, they just do, excuse me, they still do make that. It's called Grasscrete is what it's called. And basically it provides a hard surface that can allow for vehicles to drive over, as well as a surface that grass can grow through. It's a little bit difficult, but it is an option.
That certainly would look better. You know,
Yeah,
it wouldn't look like, it wouldn't be it would be part grass and part block or whatever.
I'd like
was
that a
one
lot
of the-
better. Sorry.
It was one of the options that we looked at, but it was, according to our contractor, as you say, we are going over a hill and building that up and going down to the creek. It was not something that he recommended.
That's all I asked. You are been knowledgeable and you can make your choices, your property. Thank you.
If a person was going to do that, you would only do it on the lawn area and then have it solid going down over the bank, I would think.
Okay. Any further questions to staff or the applicants?
Well, I have another concern. Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment about the driveway across the lawn. It is our intention, and at this point we have to get it in first, but we do plan, the lawn right now is because of the weather, but we haven't really done too much in it because we knew that it's going to be torn. We hopefully it was going to be torn up, but we will landscape around the driveway and make it look neat. I mean, we want a nice looking yard, so it will be much better looking lawn than it is at this point. If that eases your mind any.
I have a concern about the fence material. It being the Williams house, or that's not the real name of it, but the historic house across the street, and being in an historic district, that material looks pretty contemporary to me. I really don't see it in that area. That's a personal opinion, of course, but I'm just not sure that that's appropriate. I understand you're trying to use recycled material, and I think that's a great idea, but I just think that's an awfully modern looking fence, both for the house and the area.
Okay, well, having your classes on city planning, I kind of felt that it was a good complement to the house across the street, because it is the house built in 50 is mid-century. It is not totally modern ranch, but it is a ranch style, a modern ranch. So to me, it kind of made a nice contrast between the two houses.
Does that answer your question, Doug?
Yes.
I actually Googled mid-century modern fences, and most of them that they showed were horizontal and had a modern look, but most of them used wood. Some had metal, but usually when you see a mid-century modern with that kind of super modern space age cutout, it's a smaller feature inside the entranceway or by the door. And I'm just concerned it's such a vast amount of this laser cut metal with, and you can see right through it. I went and had a look at it. The one that's right by the driveway. I kind of agree with Doug. It's very modern. It's going to be a kapow attention. It's going to be such a vast amount of it going around. It's going to be like a big art. I don't know if it's getting too much attention. It's a cool house, and it's almost like the fence will be the story. I don't know. I'm conflicted about that fence.
Thank you. Anyone else? Before we close the public hearing? Are you comfortable, Eric?
Yep.
All right. We're closing the public hearing at 5:57. Have you got that, Paula? And now
Thank you.
we'll deliberate amongst ourselves, or we'll entertain motions. Is there anyone that wants to be the first and start talking about this?
Well, I guess I can start. I had concerned about the driveway, and I understand that if that's the only way they can get down there, that, and I'm sure they would prefer not to have another driveway across the front lawn, but I am really concerned about the fence. If we're voting on both of these together, I don't know whether I could vote for it because of the fence material.
I kind of agree with Doug. If you see it in person, it's kind of a shocker. The photo of it looks pretty nice. You think, okay, that's kind of a mid-century modern piece, but the scale of that much of it together, and it has little plastic planters, and it looks like in the center if there's a clock or something there. I don't know. I just think it's going to be it's a big focus of the thing. I was wondering, behind on 3rd Street, there is an access road behind, you know, where the yellow Victorian houses are, one that's low and high. They have a access road that goes part of the way. I wonder where that ends, and if there's any way of them coming from the bottom to get to that lower part of their, because it's a cliff, it's a drop off down to that lower section.
So Bev, that easement, or there's easement across some of those parcels, and it ends about 3 parcels over. So they do not have access.
So that's not an option. Okay,
It's not public, right?
I was
That is,
just
it's private.
curious. Okay. I don't know.
So I did too.
So how much guidance can we as a Historic Landmarks Commission give to our fence, because it's not part of the historic structure, it's not attached? So I mean, I don't feel like we have a whole lot of say over. I mean, maybe we have influence on the design, but I don't really feel like this committee can say no to that metallic style because it's not part of the building.
So the way that I look at you, the Historic Landmark Commission, have given me as staff to make a call in terms of minor modifications, and minor modifications usually are fencing, signs, things like that. So in the past, if I'm getting a replacement fence for material or something that is similar to the previous fence and it fits the design guidelines for that structure and or district, I usually just approve it. However, this is unique enough that that's why I'm bringing it to you, because it is. In reviewing it and taking a look at, like Bev, I did a little research online to take a look at, what kind of mid-century modern, I mean, we're talking Brady Bunch looking fences and a lot of these, and that's not a bad thing because that's a lot of my childhood, but there's a lot of really funky looking design back in that time period. And so I took that, and I'm not saying that this fence is funky, the colors and the materials using fit our design guidelines. But again, it kind of runs to, is it going to be a distraction? Is it going to be, when you drive by that, is that going to be too much of a, the dominant appearance that you guys are looking at? And maybe you guys are okay with a panel or two, like Bevan mentioned, closer to the door, something there. Maybe you can recommend that they just do a panel or two, or, every 3rd panel it be, or if you don't like it, then you do have the authority to deny the fence. You can approve one piece of this application. It doesn't have to be all together.
Well, maybe Dawn, are we just voting on whether they can replace a fence and put in the road, and it has nothing to do with the design? Maybe I'm way off base.
No, you're not off base. It does deal with the design. I mean, the only thing is again, we kind of go back to our historic design guidelines are pretty limited in terms of, it talks about material and design, and then it basically states that, or not design, material, the materials, and then the height, you know, and being in a front yard and the height. It doesn't really go into heavy detail on design. It just says it needs to be appropriate for the building.
So you're saying that it meets the guidelines, is that right?
So, right. So what I'm saying is that me looking at it and seeing all the design online, that I felt that it could meet within our guidelines. However, you as Historic Landmark Commission cannot agree with that, which is fine, and then state that the fence, that you do not believe the fence meets those design guidelines, and that it needs to be something different, and or maybe possibly provide some suggestions or guidance.
Bob, can I say something?
Yes, I'll let you again.
It is mid-century modern because of the year it was built. However, that home has a very traditional look, and the fence that's there now goes beautifully, in my opinion, with that home. Yes, it needs to be maybe repaired and painted, but the fence that is being proposed is extremely modern and does, in my opinion, doesn't go with that beautiful stone home.
Thank you, Donna.
Mm-hmm.
You did very clearly. Anyone else got something to say here? I don't hear a motion, or I don't even hear an idea with broached here, but I don't know if you want to carry it through to delete the fence part of the application here and talk about it at a later date, or where are you? I'm just
Well, I guess I'm still a little confused about if it meets the guidelines, and a few of us or one of us don't particularly like the design. Maybe we have to vote for it anyway. I'm confused about which way that goes.
What was in the background there, Eric? Hello.
Eric, you're muted.
Everybody go away. We've used up our dime.
Okay, no, this is Eric. Anyway, I guess, I guess it is, like Don said, it's really kind of up to us to interpret the ordinance. And I mean, that's one of the issues that we have with the design ordinance, is that it's pretty general. So there's a lot of things that maybe specifically aren't what we are looking for, but they meet those design guidelines just because they're the right materials or something like that. So I think they leave that interpretation of the design up to us. And so I think that's kind of, it's in our ballpark, at least as far as I know.
I don't know that that helps me much, but thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Did I hear a motion one way, another way, sideways?
Is it possible to amend it slightly to approve like the access of the road, and just slightly put some limits on how many times they can repeat that pattern through the front? Maybe like Don said, maybe a few of the pattern along the driveway that they use to park the cars, the side, and then some components of the horizontal fence that's very similar to what's there, but they could go up higher. The one that's there is really low. Maybe they could go up as high as the 4 foot and just do a compromise, so it's not such a huge art display statement and such a it's kind of a gentle house. It just sits there so nice, and all of a sudden it's all you will see is that fence. I'd like to give them access, but just can you put that in the
Dawn, I may be wrong, but I think usually, since those two are together on the one proposal, we normally have voted on them both, and then if it was rejected, they would come back with another proposal. Isn't that the way it usually goes?
So you can just approve the driveway if you want today, if you are still, I mean, it depends on, what the vote is. Bob hasn't really kind of taken a tally as to what direction everybody goes, but it sounds like you all are pretty similar and have some concerns regarding the design of that fencing. You can actually just approve the driveway and remove and not approve the fence at this time. And then if they did want to do the fence and if they were going to just repair what's there, I could approve that in the office, but if they wanted to come back with another design that I didn't feel, was something that was in my authority, I would then bring it back to you.
I make a motion then that we approve the portion that is the side or the street or the driveway, the new driveway, that we approve
Okay.
that. Do I need to say the number on that?
Yes.
So yes, let me take a look here and see. So Doug, just a little advice here. What we would end up doing is
I'm trying to find that number.
Motion for the
John,
number.
you're breaking up.
Only the
Dawn.
driveway.
John, you need to restate that. You're breaking up.
So, Doug, we would need you to move to approve 182-20 as amending the approval to only include the driveway and remove condition of approval number 3.
Is that the 182-20 number? Is that the right number?
That's right.
Didn't
So
Dawn
I guess I would be making a motion that we approve the driveway part of 182-20.
And Doug, you there?
Yes?
You're going to have to, under conditions of
Yeah.
approval, delete number 3.
Condition of approval number 3 that dealt with the
Our time's running thin.
Doug, did we lose you?
Doug? Doug?
Oh, okay. I never can hardly tell what you're saying, Bob. You're real fuzzy.
This is Eric. I think Bob was saying that you need to your motion, you need to also add that we would eliminate condition 3 because it just deals with the fence.
Okay, we would eliminate the what again?
Number 3.
Yeah.
Eliminate 3, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I have a question. Didn't Dawn amend one of these conditions earlier on?
Dawn?
I don't think I did. Did I do that with James, maybe?
It might have been with James.
I don't think I did on these. I did not, Forrest.
I'd second Doug's motion.
There's what we need. Now, we have a motion to approve 182-20 with the conditions of approval minus the third condition of approval. Now, is there any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, I will call for a roll call vote. May state your name and how you vote, please. Go ahead, somebody.
Forrest, aye.
Doug, aye.
Eric, aye.
Bob, aye.
Bev, aye.
Thank you. I believe that is approved all of that application. I'm sorry about the fence, but the fence will be easily taken care of, as you might have heard Don say. I thank you very much for having perseverance and staying here with us. We do have a couple more legalese things to take care of, and if I can leaf through my papers, I can find them. We gotta have two resolutions. Where are they? Oh, heavens, heavens, heavens.
So I'm gonna jump in and just Connie Sue and Connie Sue, I'm changing your name, Connie Marie and Charles. What I can do is take a look online and see if there's some, some ideas for some fencing that might be something a little more in line with the style of your home, unless there's something else that you may already have in mind. But I'll be in touch.
We thank you. We will discuss what we want to do and proceed from there. Will we get paperwork regarding this?
You will.
What's the procedure now?
So Paula will actually do a mail out probably tomorrow, maybe Monday, or maybe by Friday. And then we'll just go, you'll start your process there. So if you need to excavate, which it doesn't sound like you will be doing, there's just permit, and you're not going to need a permit from building codes. So would just be that approval, and that'll get you moving forward.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
We'll talk
Thank
soon.
you
Thank
to
you,
everyone.
Okay, members, are we still here? We need to pass a couple of resolutions. Historic resolution number 17020, and this is for the application of Discovery Development Sunshine Mill. I think we passed that with conditions, all 8 of them. So I'm making a motion, we approve this application, this resolution.
I second it.
Thank you. Any
Bev, did
discussion?
you second? Excuse me. Bev, did you second it?
I did.
Thank you.
Any discussion on this resolution? Hearing none, I'd like to have you vote on it now and identify yourself as you vote. Get started, somebody.
Forrest, aye.
Doug, aye.
Aye. Oh, Eric, aye.
Bev, aye.
Bob, aye. Resolution 170-20 is resolved. Now we go to Resolution 171-20, application 18020, Charles and Connie Sanders. And the conditions of approval are minus number 3, wherever that went. Oh, here they are on the front page with me. We will delete that one condition of approval. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move that we approve resolution HLC 171-20, the portion that involves the driveway and not the portion that involves the fence, and that we remove condition number 3.
I second the motion.
Forrest, aye.
There we go.
Aye.
Beat me to it.
Doug, aye.
Eric, aye.
Bob, aye. Did you get in there, Bev?
I did, but you might not have heard me. Aye.
You
Bev.
gotta be forceful with this group.
Thank you.
That takes care of our legalese that to my knowledge, according to the agenda, we are here for, if Dawn's got something to tell us for a staff report, but my dinner's getting awful warm. What do you got for a staff to talk about for next time, Dawn?
So I do have great news that we will not have a meeting later this month. So I think we've worked you guys pretty good for the last few months and had a special meeting today. And I so appreciate you all being here to help get these applications at least moving forward. So that's pretty much all I've got.
Then our next meeting will be sometime in September or whatever the fourth Wednesday is. I can't, my calendar's not that good. So, and this is the time that any one of you that has any comment to make about what you've seen, what you're hearing, what we should be thinking about as historic people. Bev, you're the newest one, so you get to go to the top of the list today. You got anything you want to tell us as a group?
Well, I'm just kind of making my way. I hope I didn't say anything wrong. But I was curious when it went to like a closed meeting, the client or the applicants were still there talking and listening. I thought it would be nice if I thought they'd leave and then we could have a private discussion. I don't want to get my house firebombed after one of these meetings. You know, is that the way? That's the protocol. It's always open like that.
So we don't have the only way we can do that. That is protocol. Correct. It was an executive session, which we don't have those at Historic Landmarks, and that'd be dealing with like a land sale transaction or dealing with financials. So everything's public that we deal with.
So it's all public. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll try to control myself.
Bev, just because I'm old, I would entertain or enjoy having a coffee if I can take my mask down long enough to drink it and kind of give you a little feeling of where you can be comfortable. You're doing real well. I'm real proud of you because it's easy as a new person on here to want to ask questions that we're not entitled to even ask and we aren't supposed to know. So it's easy because we get carried away, and I'd like to have coffee with you someday. So think about it. We can drink it at my house downtown. Huh?
I would love that. It's a date, and maybe my learning curve won't be so steep if I have coffee with you. I'll learn some things.
So just to let you all know too, I did, and I mentioned earlier that I had our 5-year CLG review with the State Historic Preservation Office. Curry and I talked about getting you all some training, and it's not that you necessarily need it, but everybody, it's nice to actually get that in-person training. So she said right now with us all doing our meetings via Zoom, we can set those up. So right now we're talking about maybe one of our meetings that we wouldn't have an full agenda, that we schedule some time that we actually get a little bit of training from SHPO, which would be great for all of us, me included. There's a lot of new things that are coming. So that's something, Bev, it's constant. I lean on Eric a lot for historic preservation questions as well as Curry at SHPO. So, and I've been doing it for 20 plus years. So
good.
I think I'd know more.
George, what have you seen around town? You're off, Bev. I thought, were you done? Bev?
Oh, yeah, I'm done. Thank you. And I'm taking you up on that coffee date, Bob.
So I have a couple things that I wanted to bring up. First off, I'm always going back to this building that's on the other side of the tracks, that First Street house, or not house, but that was to be torn down.
Drugstore.
Yeah. So is that on railroad property or is that city owned?
Can I make a suggestion here before my dinner gets ready? You should find some time and spend with Eric. Some evening, some afternoon, something that's communicable. Eric is our fountain on that. He has the answers if anybody would. And he is not too emotional anymore. He was quite emotional for a while, but he calmed down a little bit now. And I think it would be wise if maybe after you and he get done, Bev gets in on this too, because I don't know how much background she has on the Walden drugs. She's been to as many city council meetings as I have, but I don't know how much background she has. So, could you work that out between the two of you?
Yeah, I can shoot Eric an email and then in detail and see what he says.
I went to one of your presentations at the Discovery Center, so I have a little bit of knowledge on it, a bit of background. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to meet with you, Forrest. Maybe we can just meet down there and stuff at some point.
Yeah, and then the other thing I just want to mention to all of you, I did announce that I'm going to run for city council this upcoming election. So if I do happen to win that, I have been informed by Azetta that I will not be able to serve on this committee. So
Oh,
I want to know who you are.
it's bittersweet, you know? I want it, but I don't want it because I enjoy working with all of you.
I hadn't paid any attention. All I knew was who was filed for mayor. So congratulations for filing.
I agree.
I'm hearing some feedback from somewhere, but it's okay.
So, and one thing, Forrest, if you do, you're requesting getting as the staff liaison, or excuse me, the commission, or excuse me, council liaison, you could request to come to HLC. So, I mean, I'm not sure how often he changes those.
I'd even vote for it. You know, it would be a big plus. But the more knowledge you can have of that building, anytime, is taken. The only thing we have to be a little cautious of, other than the virus, is anti-quorum laws. We can't get together too many of us, or we constitute a quorum, and that is a no-no and according to procedurals. So, but single person talking to single person does not qualify. You're in good shape. So, Doug, what about you?
Bummer Forrest couldn't do both. I'd hate to lose him. Don, when is our next meeting?
So it'll be the 4th week in September. Oh, that's hunting season, isn't it, Doug?
Oh,
Hang on,
okay.
let me look. 1, 2, 3, 4. That'd be September 23rd.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You got anything you want to add historically, Doug? I don't know. Let's lost Doug. Eric.
I'm good.
Let's see, I guess just a couple of updates. 2 sets of the doors of the original restored doors at the Chinese building are back in place if anybody wants to take a look at those. I put some shutters over the doors. The glass, the upper 2/3 are glass, and I was kind of afraid they'd get broken out at some point, especially since the building isn't getting used much. But it looks like it's a feature that the doors had originally as well. So the originals definitely weren't made out of plywood like these ones, but that was a compromise for cost and also weight. And then at the Anderson House Barn, Fort Dalles Museum isn't open yet, but there's been a lot of work going on up there. So if people want to go up and take a look, those new gutters are on at the Anderson House, and they seem to work quite well. The new siding's on in the vehicle building, and that makes it blend in a little bit better. And then we also installed the threshing log back into the threshing floor at the Anderson barn. So that's not something you can see till the museum's open again, but that should add something to the visitor experience.
Wonderful. You got that thrashing wheel to work? If you got it in an area where it'll work rather than get tripped over?
Yeah, it's all hooked in. We reproduced the post. We got some original photographs for the post, which was the missing part of the whole assembly. So we reproduced that and then put the log fitted it into the slot in the post. And it kind of takes up part of the space there, but it divides that threshing floor into 2 different sections. So I think it should be not too much of a tripping hazard. I guess we'll see.
Okay. Who have I missed? I'm glad to hear you have filed for city council, and I hope you all the luck in the world, but this isn't good. You're not going to get elected before we have another meeting anyhow, so we're going to get something more out of you.
You will.
Donna, did she disappear? I think Donna probably went home, cooked dinner. No, she has doesn't have cooked dinner. He does. Anyhow, if no one has any further comments, I would enjoy a motion that we adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Good. I heard it was second, and then I heard everybody voted unanimously in favor of it. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks,
Good
everyone.
night.
Bye.
Bye.
Have they been able to see me, Michael? Because my picture never was in my, it says Doug